Hello, and welcome to this episode of FlyBy, presented by the National Model Aviation Museum. I'm your host, Claire, and today we'll be talking to Frank Scott about the Sky Baby.
My name is Frank Scott. I was born in 1939, which is very convenient for getting started in model aviation because I grew up in the 1950s particularly. That was a fantastic time for aviation. The news was full of it, the magazines, lots of airplanes flying over. We had a big war going on which kept interest at a very high pitch. But anyway, I grew up at a time when there were neighborhood hobby shops everywhere. I think that I could probably think of about 5 hobby shops that I consider to be in bicycle distance. This was very convenient. If you couldn't find what you wanted at one, you pedaled to the next, and you could find everything you needed. So, lots of airplanes. My first kits came from a dry goods store just down the street. It was a little shop where a lady sold fabric and notion, and I think she lived in the back of the shop. But by her cash register, she had a few Gillows kits. So anyway, I would go to her dry goods shop and give her a dime or a quarter, whatever was available. And I'd buy these Gillows kits. I used them as a source for parts, materials, tissue, sticks, balsa. At that time, I didn't know there were hobby shops. So I was making my own gliders and things from her products. Then I found the hobby shops, started building. About, I don't remember, it had been 52 or 54 about that, I joined the EMA. My first Nats was at Glenview. I started off free flight, and my parents would go to Florida in the winters, and there was a man who lived just down the street named George Glass, and he flew control line. So he pretty much introduced me to control line. And there we flew a ball diamond at a city park in West Palm Beach. So my first control line model would have been a Tester's sophomore 19 with a Cameron 19 engine. So flew that one and then just kept flying and flying. Of course, got into the half A's. When the Cox engines came along, then things really took off. The people at the Herkimer Engine Works wouldn't like this, but the Cox engine was so much more powerful, so much easier to get started. Yeah, they were a game changer. Mostly I just flew for fun. Then I got into, sometimes there would be a contest where they would have an event for unorthodox models, which had a certain appeal to me. And then I got into control line scale. And probably my first really good control line scale model was a Fox 35 powered Blum & Voss BV-141B, which looks like half of a P-38. My children and I, we have a boy and a girl, Jeanette and Chris. They were pretty young, but we would go to Toledo show. And at Toledo one year, the man named Bob Sargent had a little cottage company called Aeronautics. And he was selling plans for half-A racers. Well, I already established that I liked half-A's, and so we bought some of his plans, such as these. And the result of that was building this very airplane. I pretty much copied his plans, except that I cocked the engine on the side because I had this notion about speeding at pit stops, and it works. On my models to this day, generally the engine will be offset at an angle because I would have electrical contacts on my index finger, my thumb, a battery strapped to my hand, and just by grabbing like this, the glow plug is lit. The crankcase is anodized. Electrically, that's not a good thing. You just scrape that off. So then you have a good ground. You've got the top of the plug. Everything is good. So pit stops were fast. So it's a matter of grab the airplane, squirt the fuel into the syringe, grab it, flip it, it's gone. Since then, all my airplanes have the offset engine. With the passage of time, my son started flying control line models. He started with the Cox PT-19. And when we would go to a contest, I would just find somebody to pit for me. Just pick up who's. So we were at a contest one time, probably up in Cleveland, because we traveled everywhere to contest. I looked, I couldn't find anybody that was available. They were all busy. And Chris said, and Chris, he's 7 maybe, he said, "Chris, let me fly for you." And I thought, well, this isn't going to work. And I can't say no because it will break his heart. So we went and we talked to the contest director. And the CD said, okay, he's pretty small. He's not going to be able to reach if he's passing. So they gave Chris dispensation to pass underneath. And to do that, he would have to duck down and run around in a circle in front of the guys. And to everyone's surprise, especially mine, he won. In point of fact, I have never flown a half-A race since then. We would go to contests, like he would fly his event and I would pit, and then he would fly my event and I'd pit. This was a creation of the Cleveland Model Club, and they called them Formula V. And they're to 1/16th scale. And the AMA came along later with the 1/12th scale. When the AMA came along with the 1/12th scale, the people that were flying these were pretty annoyed because A, they already had the airplanes, and B, well, gee, a big airplane, that's just going to be the slowest down. But it turned out we were wrong. There, when we went to building to the AMA specs, the larger airplane, same engine, larger airplane, was a lot easier to fly, and it was faster too. This airplane was designed and built from scratch. It's inspired by the Sky Baby, which was the first Sweeby airplane that Rochester built. The first Sweepy had, I believe, some stability issues. This being the Sweeby, he deepened the aft fuselage, and so for the real airplane. Anyway, I liked the way this Sky Baby looked, and so that's what inspired this airplane. The wheels are not like anything you'd find in a store. There was a fellow in our model club, this is now in Dayton, the Dayton Buzz and Buzzards, which still exist. There's a man named Jim Andrus, worked in a factory, and he made a mold for these wheels. So they're very, very nice wheels, and any kids that he gave the wheels for tended to be thrilled. So we live just north of Dayton, near the Salem Mall, and there were about half a dozen kids or so. I called them the Honeybrook Gang because we lived on Honeybrook Avenue. I seemed to have the only jigsaw in the neighborhood, and I had a soldering iron, and so if the kids were working on their own design or from plans, they'd come to me to cut out their parts, and any soldering they needed to do, wheels, control lines, whatever, they came to me. And the back fence behind our house, chain link, big pipe, I had measured off the back rail in standard line lengths. So when kids were making up control lines for racing, they'd come to my place, make up their lines, and good to go. Then when the contest came along, I'd load up as many kids as would fit in our car, and we'd all go together.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of FlyBy. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections, please email us at museum@modelaircraft.org. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.